ReZero Starting Life in Another World Volume 11, this time with lovely Frederica and Petra on the cover. And I love this cover, even though I'm not the biggest fan of any of these characters, I think this cover is one of the best in Arc 4. It's very wholesome, it oozes warmth, and it displays the personality of both characters perfectly, with the caring senpai and the hardworking kohai. In terms of visual storytelling, this is perhaps one of the best covers in the entire series. You can show this to someone who has never read ReZero and they will get the gist of these characters' personalities. Just like the previous cover, it also features the characters in the moment in the story where they are the most relevant. As we saw in Arc 3, some of the cover choices were quite peculiar. As a final note, and this is my personal opinion, I love covers where the characters highlighted are front and center. Here your attention is immediately grabbed by Frederica, and as you go down you see her putting the blanket over Petra. The whole action is centered. It's also the reason why I like, for example, Volume 4's cover so much. It just grabs your attention immediately, although as you know I don't like Volume 4 that much, as I've talked about in previous videos. So enough of me pretending to be an art critic, let's get right into Volume 11. Volume 11's structure is very similar to Volume 6, where you have the most action in the first 2/3 of the book and then mostly talking in the final third, with the book itself ending with a cliffhanger. From a story standpoint, Volume 11 covers roughly 3 of Subaru's loops, with the first one starting off as a direct continuation of the ending of Volume 10. After Subaru met his doom at the hands of Elsa, he wants to get back to the mansion as soon as possible. "I've gotta get back to the mansion without a moment to spare. I have to figure out what happened." In the midst of all the problems in the sanctuary, Subaru's focus is actually on the mansion, where Rem, Petra and Beatrice are in danger because of Elsa, and then there's the obvious red herring with Frederica. As I said in the last review, nothing about Frederica seems evil or ill-intentioned, from her dialogue to the opinions the other characters have of her, to the actual cover of this book. According to the limited information that we have, Subaru is understandably worried that Frederica may be colluding with Elsa, and now that we have logical proof to doubt Frederica, Roswell, the instigator from last time, quickly dismisses that possibility. Even so, she isn't one to intentionally bring harm to others. She has not the courage to do so. So I still don't get the point of this. It's obvious that Frederica isn't a villain and that this is just a lame red herring. Even our main agitator Roswell quickly discards this as a possibility, and yet this is a relevant point of discussion in both volumes 10 and 11. When I said that Arc 4 has too much going on, I think this is a perfect example of something that could be cut, as in my opinion it doesn't add much to the story and it's so ridiculous that even the author seems to ridicule it as a possibility. At Roswell's request, Rum goes with Subaru to the mansion and we quickly discover that Frederica is in fact innocent. But then Elsa shows up and she's out for blood. Everybody's blood. She's so evil and despicable she even takes poor Petra hostage. As if Elsa isn't enough, the mansion is suddenly being attacked by all of these demon beasts, and Rum wants to make the pragmatic choice and leave Beatrice and Ram behind because they just can't beat these overwhelming odds, but Subaru obviously opposes this. This is my personal opinion, but I don't think that Rum's decision making would change if she could still remember Ram, because at multiple points in the series we saw both sisters be coldly rational and make these types of harsh decisions. Obviously Subaru will not stand for this because Ram saved him so many times and he's so attached to her that he wants to save her still, even if it means a likely demise. After Frederica helps persuade Ram to go back into the mansion to save Ram and Beatrice, what proceeds is a brutal beatdown where Subaru is powerless to save anyone that he loves, as has become typical of these bad endings in ReZero. Patorash sacrifices himself for Subaru. Subaru thinks that he is at least holding on to Petra, but then realizes it is only her arm left. Subaru is bloody and full of wounds, Rum is nowhere to be found, presumed dead or smartly ran away, Frederica is implied to have perished at the hands of Elsa, and in a final desperate attempt to at least save Ram or at least hold Elsa long enough for Ram to be spared just a moment longer, he goes up and opens the door to the Forbidden Archive. This scene is very powerful and brings us so many questions, the most obvious being why didn't Beatrice help anyone at the mansion, but then the more I thought about it, the more I thought that I could reverse the question. If Beatrice is so determined to ignore the outside world and not interfere with it, why is she unable to ignore Subaru? And that is perhaps the better question to ask. Subaru is livid with Beatrice because he thinks that she may have triggered a new save point and he may be stuck in a present where Ram, Petra and Frederica are dead. And then the grand reveal comes. Beatrice has a gospel, and this to me is the most shocking reveal of Volume 11. Does this mean that Beatrice is a witch cultist? Does this mean that everything she did was not of her own free will but out of the gospel's will? Does this mean that her affection for Subaru is manufactured by the gospel? Beatrice breaks down crying, saying something about her mother. What mother? This is also a connection that hasn't been revealed yet, and before Subaru can get any answers, he passes away from blood loss, and this brings us to the second reset of Arc 4. Subaru's psyche is clearly broken from all of this. He's so emotionally scarred that he even barely cares about Emilia, something that Otto picks up, and unfortunately for him, this is also something that Garfield notices. Subaru's interactions with Garfield have been strange. It seems like Garfield always reacts slightly different towards Subaru, and this is highly unusual in ReZero. In fact, characters reacting the same way on each loop is something that even the author takes advantage of to keep these light novels shorter and advance the story faster. When reading ReZero, there are multiple instances of dialogue scenes being skipped because they just happened the same way on a previous loop. For a story that hinges on a character redoing his past, ReZero is actually not very repetitive. Every scene either adds something new or is skipped entirely. That's why Garfield stands out so much to the reader even on a meta level, and long story short, this time he imprisons Subaru without anyone knowing because he thinks that Subaru is a witch cultist. He justifies this theory by saying that Subaru oozes the witch's miasma, something that we already knew, but also because he showed no care towards Emilia, and that was very off character. This is very curious because if you remember back in Arc 3, Krush refused to help Subaru in one of the loops because of the exact same reason, so it seems that Subaru hasn't quite learned his lesson. As an extra sting this time, Garfield even says that Subaru's eyes remind him of that bastard Roswell, and that's because Subaru was being very Machiavellian, or should I say Roswellian, because he was just advancing his objectives in his own self-interest and wasn't caring for those around him, especially Emilia. As punishment for his transgressions, Subaru gets to spend 3 days in darkness reliving the trauma from previous loops. I really like this part of the book. To me it's very well written, I just wish it was a bit longer. To the author's credit, it seems like Subaru was in the darkness for a long time, but to the reader it was actually only a few pages. Eventually Otto comes to save Subaru and we get this very wholesome moment between the two. There was always some implicit distance because Otto wasn't officially part of the crew, even if he cared for Subaru and vice versa, and here Subaru seems very confused and Otto just replies him very matter of fact. Is it really strange to help out a friend? Mr. Otto just redeemed himself, he is a true buddy. Subaru laughs at himself for being such a fool. He was so preoccupied with everything else that he missed the most obvious possibility, and this really highlights how Otto and Subaru's relationship has progressed. If you remember, back in Arc 3, Otto pushed Subaru out of a carriage to try and save himself from the white whale, so their relationship has come a long way, from when now Otto risks his life to try and save Subaru. Instead of running away from the sanctuary, ballsy Subaru goes straight to Roswell to get some answers. And we do get some, but to be completely honest, we are left with many more questions. We discover that Beatrice is not a witch cultist, so that's a good start, and also that her gospel is one of the only 2 true gospels, whatever that means, and then Roswell says to Subaru that in order for her to come with him, all he needs to do is say to her that he is that person, and she will come with him according to her pact. We also discover that this pact that they keep talking about is not between Beatrice and Roswell, but between Beatrice and another person. So once again, we are left with more questions than when we started. What is the true gospel? What is the pact? Who is it with? So many questions. As Subaru tries to leave the sanctuary, conflict emerges with Garfield, who fully transforms, going berserker, going as far as annihilating some of the villagers that are trying to help Subaru. And in the middle of all this, once again Frederica's crystal shines blue and Subaru teleports. As he comes back to his senses, he goes outside and sees that the sanctuary is filled with snow, and then he finds these little guys. The Great Rabbit Horde, or the Ōsagi as we get to know them, are terrifying. The description of Subaru being eaten alive by the Ōsagi is honestly terrifying. It's way scarier in the book than even the anime could convey. And it's hilarious to me that in a book with Elsa, Demon Beast, and the Berserker Garfield, the scariest thing by far is a giant horde of cute bunnies the size of your fist. Remember when I said that Subaru's psyche was broken after the previous bad ending? Well, here it's even worse. Subaru is so traumatized and confused that immediately upon waking up, he is once again invited to the witch's tea party. I always enjoy reading these witches' tea parties, and that's very interesting because if you want to be very cynical about it, these tea parties are not entirely, but mostly glorified information dumps. And I can hear the boos in the background from all of the Echidna fans, and I get it, I like her too. I think it's a testament to how charismatic her character is and how entertaining the dynamic between her and Subaru is that we like these witches' tea parties so much, even though it's mostly character stalking in a closed-off dimension that has no bearing in the real world. Although the no bearing in the real world may not be entirely correct as we see at the end of the book, but we'll get there. We get a lot of major and minor revelations in this witch's tea party, so let's start off with the first one. Subaru accurately deduces that since Echidna can access his memories, she knows that he can return by death. And then there's this playful, almost dare I say, flirtatious tension where Echidna is daring Subaru to say it out loud, daring Subaru to utter the truth he could not tell anyone. It is unexplained in the book if Echidna's insistence on Subaru saying it out loud is because of Subaru's own personal growth, if it's purely for Echidna's entertainment as she's curious about what will happen, or if it's just the biggest disrespect that she can sling towards Satella at this point, make Subaru tell their secret. In my own opinion, I think Echidna is motivated by all of the reasons I just stated. I think she truly cares for Subaru, at least as far as her own self-interest is concerned. I think she is truly curious, as she is with anything, about what will happen if he utters the taboo inside her domain, and she does make it a point, even in this book, to state many times how much she hates Satella. The scene that follows is very emotional, with Subaru letting out all of the bottled up emotions inside of him, and I can only imagine how great this scene would be if he could do this with Emilia or Rem, but maybe one day. Now that will be peak fiction. Throughout their conversation, they also speculate on the nature of return by death. Echidna assumes that return by death has no limit, and I think this is also the consensus among the reader. At least in the books up until this point, nothing has really indicated otherwise. Also, and I know these aren't canon, but there are some side stories by the author where Subaru resets many times, so I assume return by death has no limit. Once again, these aren't canon and I haven't read them in full detail, but it's just a fun fact. They also speculate that due to the witch's infatuation with Subaru, return by death only really cares about him. And this relates to a scene in the beginning of the book where Ram is talking with Subaru and she notices that he has become a lot more protective of Emilia. This is justified by Puck's absence and the mental toll that the trial takes on Emilia, but I don't think that's all. Ever since Ram's loss in Arc 3, Subaru has become generally more protective, perhaps even paranoid. This is highlighted in this very volume where Subaru goes into a fit of rage because he thinks that Beatrice may have locked him into a present where so many of his friends are dead. After Arc 3, Subaru is painfully aware that while return by death is very useful, it is not infallible. Subaru cannot control where in time he will go back, and return by death only cares about Subaru's safety, no one else's. This creates a very interesting dynamic for the reader for what is essentially an immortal character. Subaru is always second-guessing his decisions because he may be leaving someone behind. This feeling of paranoia is even more pronounced in Arc 4, where we have a battle on two fronts. First we have the mansion being attacked by Elsa and demon beasts, and then we have this very volatile situation in the sanctuary with Garfield and also the looming threat of the Oosagi. In the middle of all of this, Echidna just casually drops that Volcanica destroyed her body and sealed her away, and that's interesting because if I recall there was a character that wanted to destroy the dragon. ReZero, can't quite remember the name. At the end of the volume, Subaru confronts three other witches who also apparently live in this castle of dreams. I like all three of them. I especially like Minerva, the Witch of Wrath, whose powers heal people, which I think is a hilarious and very cool subversion of how usually Wrath is depicted in media. I will say that while I like Typhon's powers in a vacuum, I don't think they really fit the sin that she represents. Is she prideful because she uses her powers to judge other people? The correlation isn't quite there to me. If this is obvious to someone, leave it in the comments because I don't really get it. I think that Typhon's powers are very cool and this character could be repackaged into something else and the real Typhon could have some more pride-like powers. I don't know, I don't really get the connection between her powers and her sin. Finally, Daphne. Daphne is nuts and I love it. She uses the most twisted logic to explain things. In that sense, she is the most witch-like character. You can see that Daphne does not reason like a normal human being. She's completely insane. The bigger a creature is, the more people it can feed, right? The white whale, it's big, right? A lot of people could be satisfied from eating it. Even if Bunny's stomach is empty, it doesn't make Daphne's stomach emptier. She's got a point there. While aesthetically and thematically I like Minerva the most out of these three witches, to me Daphne left the strongest impression. She's not really evil, she's primal, she's a force of nature, she lives by the strong will consume the weak. She's a very peculiar character and a very interesting contrast to Subaru, whose conscience haunts him all the time. I know there was a cutscene from the web novel where she gave Subaru her sense of hunger, making Subaru start eating his own arm, and I'm very sad that they removed that from the light novel because I love that scene, it fits Daphne perfectly. I love that in their final exchange of words, Subaru bravely challenges the witch and she seems to reply with nothing but joy. He says, "I will destroy the great rabbit. I have already killed the white whale. I won't accept any complaints from their mummy dearest." To which she replies, "Huppity human, do it if you can." The book ends with Subaru waking up to a very strange commotion that I will be talking about in my review of Volume 12 and a very interesting reveal right in the final pages. Next time, make no mistakes, yes? Subaru Natsuki, how much does Roswell know and why does he have a gospel as well? Guess we'll have to read the next volumes to find out. Overall, this volume is dense, and I think it incorporates both the good and the bad of Arc 4. It's difficult for both the writer and the reader to manage a narrative where you are concurrently introducing multiple threats on two different locations, plus introducing new characters, plus developing deeper already existing characters. It's just too much going on. As I said in the last video, I get that it's kind of the point of Arc 4, but still the critique remains that it's kind of hard for the reader to keep track of so much going on. Still, I will say, Volume 11 is overwhelming, but it's engrossing. Every answer comes with two new questions, you're just craving knowledge, you feel like Echidna, you just want to know more. So I am enjoying this, let's see how I feel about Arc 4 after the end of these reviews. As for my MVP of Volume 11, I don't know, I have so many good candidates to choose from. I could choose Echidna, Daphne, Minerva, Dio Sagi, even little Petra. I mean, she was gangster in this book, telling everybody to run away and save themselves. She's a brave girl. I would give it to the Sagi because of the sheer horror and impact of their scene, but their scene was short in the context of the whole book. So I have to give it to our main punching bag, Otto. This man was a true friend and a true hero in this book. My MVP of Volume 11 is Otto. Leave yours in the comments below. This was all from me today, folks. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys for my next review of Volume 12. Bye bye.